for 30 years, Foresight is an organization that has been steering imaginations of flourishing futures and the technologies that get us there. And it seems like, now we're really at this inflection point, where we have to ask ourselves, are we closer or further away from those grand futures that many of us are openly and secretly often dreaming of, right? And, I think this may be, just a test for civilization. Like, we've been hearing this a lot about the crisis, right? But it's not a test for this community, right? Because I think, as this test really also beautifully reveals, there is no world homunculus in the global control tower. It's really up to us, and probably for the better. And, I think this crisis is really real, right? Like, we shouldn't kid ourselves. It's costing lives. It's really still ramping up, and it demands from every one of us to step up our support. But in addition, it really also opens up the window into a different world, right? Because I think things never dreamt possible before are really happening around the world right now. And many of them are kind of nightmarish, right? But they don't have to be. They don't have to be nightmarish, because this opening must mean that there's room for upside risk, for existential hope, for something extremely good happening. And, this premise that only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change, and that the actions that are taken within that crisis depend on the ideas that are lying around during the crisis. This is kind of like a premise that has often been used in kind of like risk communities to kind of brainstorm ways in which we could make specific actions palatable for the long-term benefit of life, right? But when we were thinking about like a crisis and what ideas to have around, then this crisis was always hypothetical. It was often vague, but it was always hypothetical. But now it's here. And so I think as the cards of civilization get reshuffled, really much is at stake, but so much more is possible, right? And so with the start of Shelter in Place, we launched the daily global online salons to make sense of COVID-19 and to share projects in need of support, to think about the long-term consequences, to make people feel safe and connected, but to also really think about those larger opportunities. And those online salons, called the Daily Sanity Preserver, that you can find on the spreadsheet under the locked tab, with all of the different salons that we had, with all of the speakers that we had, and with all of the videos. Those salons really touched the lives of many deeply during this kind of challenging time, right? We had up to 100 participants from across the globe join per salon, and many of them regularly discussed ways out of this crisis. They funded and advised projects, and they coordinated aligned minds really much beyond the virtual container. And now, after 5 weeks of those salons, like, we finally feel like, we have some understanding, a beginning of an understanding of the opportunities that could be leveraged for long-term futures. And some of those really demand urgency, right? So this is why now we're launching the Foresight HiveMind, which is a 3-week global online workshop to develop promising opportunities into action. And this is not to say, that currently there isn't much needed to be done anymore, right? There is still a lot of things that we can be doing right now. And we encourage you to watch the salons. We had a few on vaccine production. We had a few on mask and PPE efforts. And, we're trying everything possible to showcase those efforts and to really still not neglect that there's a ton of work that's happening and that needs to happen right now that people can get involved in, right? But that said, it's also the time to, pick some heroes, celebrate those, and think about how not to lose momentum for a better world. And so we're going to try to do that thing for the next 3 weeks. And I think it's a good time to do this because the window of opportunity is shrinking, right? Soon the dust will settle onto the default world, right? And soon this one issue that unites us really as humans will be digested into different echo chambers, and fingers will be pointed. And we already see this. And soon the cracks really that are kind of opening up in our broken paradigms, through which sometimes the light of a different future shines, will be stuffed by the same old, right? Unless, from the ashes of today, the phoenix of a different future rises. And, I think it's really up to us to think about what qualities do we want to take into this new tomorrow, and what do we want to leave behind, right? And so over the next 3 weeks, we will table you a few suggestions in the form of sessions with specific questions. But what they're hinting at is a future that is guided by hopeful visions and a diversity of views, that is awoken to life by art and awe, that is relayed by a shared narrative, media and movies, that is celebrated by global rituals, that is championed by a culture of honesty, altruism, and cooperation, that is invigorated by physical health and transformation, that is nurtured by mental health and well-being, that's strengthened by communities, that's unlocked through a rich virtual life, that's powered by a sound political economy, that's open to cross-cultural understanding, that's informed by reasoned global sense-making, that's coordinated by people-friendly technology, that's accelerated by foundational high-impact science, that's leapfrogged by effective investment in philanthropy, that's resting on the back of resilient institutions, and that's in harmony with our planet's ecosystem, and perhaps expanding it outward. So those all sound quite lofty, but you know, those are really a few possibilities that we see from the past few weeks that are opening up, right, to push more for those worlds. And we're sure you have many, many, many more ideas that were always too audacious before they now seem possible. And they don't only have to be ideas, they should be tokens, moments, whatever. You know, they should be like moments of hopes that we can build a mosaic out of. And now I already talked to you a little bit about leaving some space in the spreadsheet for tokens of hope. But Lou will share a little exercise with you that, again, we're going to do now before we dive into the different sessions.
Are you muting yourself? Or all right, I speak here. I'll speak here. So hello, everyone, again. Yes, so now we're going to take a minute to kind of fire your right brain.
Yeah.
The idea is, sorry. The idea is you are here also to envision those futures with us, right? So think about, really, when you think about these visions for the future, we thought about these 15 tracks that Alison just mentioned, but it cannot be everything, right? Because on the one hand, we can't think about everything, and on the other, there are many things that cannot be expressed through only words. When thinking about a certain quality or a certain feeling that you want to bring into this future. So the exercise for you is think about what or who in an artist, an art piece is something that really connects you, moved this different, tickles this different part of you, and really evokes, express this beautiful, like, future, flourishing future for life and the biosphere. And so I'm going to give you 1 minute to think about it. You can turn off the video, you can close your eyes, whichever. And then once you have thought about what is this thing that you want to take with you in this whole new world that we are building, you can put it in the spreadsheet in the bit of hope. And after which each session during this week will be like going through them and bringing them up, and maybe you'll want to share it yourself, or we'll be discussing them. All right, now everyone, what do you want to take into this new tomorrow?
This could be a poem, it could be, you know, it could be a painting, it could be a quote that you read, it could be really anything. Just what tickles you and what makes you feel inspired. What do you want to see more of? Think about this now, and I will already be sharing and screen sharing where you should share a link to this in a minute or so. But feel free, if it's too awkward for you to do this with eyes closed while we're all on it, to close your video for a moment. All right, everyone. Great. So now we are hoping that perhaps you could take a moment to fill that bit of hope into this spreadsheet. So again, I'm sharing the screen. Here you have the bit of hope on the right-hand side. Amazing. So I think a few of you are already filling that in. This could be a link to something that that just really inspires you and that you want to have, that you want to see and have more of in this new world. So what we're hoping to do over the next few salons, if you want to say a few words about that.
Yeah, we'll take 10 minutes and look through these bits of hopes and discuss them. And if you want to, you can share it with the group and express it with everyone.
Yeah. So what we're going to be doing after each salon, when we're going to get all heady in the next 3 weeks, and what we are going to do is give you a little bit of space. At the end, we're going to hang out for 10 minutes, and we're going to pull in people whose bits of hope we found particularly inspiring, and ask you if you were interested and share a little bit about why that is that you want to take more of that into this new world. Okay, sounds good? All right, great. Then with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to be moving on to the speaker introductions. So as I said, we've had a few really fantastic speakers over the past few weeks, and now it's really up to the speakers to introduce themselves for a little while. And I think the best way we can do this is do according to session topics. So what we basically did, if you would like to now, I'll share the screen again, go into screen share, into the HiveMind section. This is where we're going to be discussing the different speakers now. And we have a few of the sessions. We're currently here in the HiveMind kickoff tab, which is all contributors and you. And now we're going to be discussing what hopeful long-term views of humanity can be birthed out of this crisis. And we're going to go down the list and really go session by session so that people can introduce themselves. As you've seen, we have divided the different topics and the different screening questions according to different weeks. So the first week, we're going to talk about cultivating a humane long-term culture. In the second week, we're going to talk about advancing high-impact science and technology. And in the third week, we're going to talk about strengthening resilient and cooperative global systems. In each of those weeks, every day, we'll be meeting on the same Zoom room at 11 a.m. 11 a.m. PT, so that all of you can join. And we're going to be discussing one screening question. And that question popped out of one of the last salons. We invited a few contributors that are listed on the right to try to help you make sense of this question. And what we're hoping to do, and Lou will talk about that in a minute, is do some collaborative note-taking and do a report at the end of this, but also really think about what are specific action items. Some items don't need more talking, they don't need more writing. We can do them right now. So again, through those weeks, we encourage you to really think as activists and make those working group sessions as actionable as possible. All right, so without further ado, let's maybe really do the first one up. The first one is, what hopeful long-term views for humanity can be birthed out of this crisis? And that session will start on Monday at 11 a.m. And let's see who we have from that session. We have Anders here, I think, maybe David Pierce as well. So I'm now going to manage the participants. And Anders, I will unmute you now. Do you want to say who you are, a few words, and an opportunity that you want to flag?
Thank you. Well, I'm Anders Sandberg. I'm a researcher at the Future Humanity Institute in Oxford, and also involved with the Institute for Future Studies in Stockholm, Allfed, and I can't stay away from interesting future-oriented bigger questions. And my big thing is, of course, getting to a grand future. But that means we need to survive long enough and get our act together so we can actually achieve that grand future. And I think that's it, because I'm an academic jack of all trades. I'm interested in every single topic there is, and I want to promote all of them.
All right, great. You want to promote all of them. That's great. Okay, next one up, we have I think Max couldn't join, Ari, and is David Eagleman on the call? Yes, we have David. I'm unmuting you now, David.
Hey guys, David Eagleman. Yeah, the thing I'm interested in right now is about brain plasticity and how this time is really challenging all our internal models about how the world runs. And that's actually the best thing that you can do for your brain in terms of coming up with new kinds of solutions.
Okay, lovely. Okay, amazing. Next one up, we have another fantastic David, and that's David Pierce. David, I'm going to unmute you right now.
Thank you, Alison. Very good to be here. Yes, I think this great plague illustrates that in some sense we're all in this together. We need a sense of us that embraces all sentient beings. And yes, I mean, one of the good things I would hope comes from COVID-19 is the end of animal agriculture, switch to cultured meat, and so there will be, one would hope, no more of these zoonotic plagues. I'm very happy to be on the panel with Anders, because as well as all his other achievements, I probably quote Anders more than anyone else, because he once said, admittedly when prompted, "I do have a ridiculously high hedonic set point." And Anders gives the lie to the notion that it's possible to be essentially extremely happy without losing critical insight. And I very much hope that in the long run, we're going to be moving towards an entire civilization based on gradients of intelligent bliss.
Fantastic, man. I don't think anyone could have said it better. This is great. Okay, next one up, we're moving into Tuesday's session. And also, one little point, we have currently a few of the collaborators on the spreadsheet, but a few are still yet to come. So you have to look forward to a few more of those that we're going to be updating in the next, well, 3 weeks, really. Okay, next session up on Tuesday. Tuesday, we have, how can we champion the emerging culture of civic responsibility and people stepping up ethically to do the right thing? We've seen a lot of this already. We've seen a lot of incredible kind of efforts that were launched really without asking permission. And we're going to have a few folks talking about how we can basically steer up that culture more and facilitate much more of it. Mark Miller, I'm going to unmute yourself. Who are you and what do you have to bring to that session?
Hi,
Mark, you're unmuted.
am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay, it seemed like we were wrestling over the unmute button there. One of the things that has really stood out to me in watching the response to COVID is a cultural difference between what I experience as a software engineer in the computer industry and what I've been observing in the medical industry. And that is what I call the culture of permission. This relates directly to what Alison just said, is that there's a tremendous amount of things that people knew to do that they could have done, but they didn't do because they asked permission and they waited until they got permission before doing it. And more, I think people are realizing that the permission granted institutions are dysfunctional and are largely responsible for the delayed response that in the US that created such a tragedy. I would like to grow decentralized institutions that help encourage people to do what they know is right and feel safer from retaliation by legacy centralized institutions. So in particular, I put down on the spreadsheet that I would really like help forming a legal defense fund for DIY PPE efforts.
All right, great. Yeah, I think a few things that we may discuss as well. There are potentially whistleblower awards and similar things that would encourage and incentivize people actually to step up and do the right thing. So definitely join that session. Tia, we have you in that session as well. Do you want to say hi and just maybe a sentence or so about you?
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. Calling in from Lichfield in the UK. I'm the CEO of Replenish Earth. I really strongly believe that we're indigenous to Earth, and the planet's ecosystem influences us because of our noetic evolution, which has really adapted to change according to our physical surroundings. Rooms, buildings, cities are multisensory, they're immersive, and they're experiences that can change our brains by rewriting the code epigenetically. And so that's very much about the nurture that the city and the physical environment can create to the way that we behave, the way that we create. And I'm super curious about how we can invite our intuition to the conversations about acknowledging our fears. So yeah, really looking forward to the conversation with Mark and Loretta. And thank you all very much. What a great opportunity.
All right, great. Muting the little police sounds in the back. We are still in the real world. Now we know. Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to have you on board. Okay, next one up. We are launching into Wednesday. Wednesday, we're going to talk about how can we increase interest in psychological well-being and expansion that moves more into focus during isolation. And here we have an insane lineup already. Nell, do you want to unmute yourself? I think you can do that yourself right now. I trust most people to do that very pleasantly. Nell, who are you and what can we expect from you?
Thank you. Yeah, I've been working the last several months to distill information, I suppose. There's so much noise out there and a great deal of misinformation as well, or even disinformation, because unfortunately we're living in a bizarro world where sometimes random people on Reddit may be a more actionable and trustworthy source of information even than some of our health institutions. That's not supposed to happen. And I really enjoyed Mark's points about some of the dangers of these centralized institutions. And I observed that after the First World War, we got the League of Nations, and it wasn't great, but it was a good start. And then in the wake of the Second World War, we got a lot of new institutions, the UN, Bretton Woods, the Atlantic Council, NATO, etc. And they've had many successes and some failures. My hope is that our World War III of humanity against the virus will, in its wake, lead to the creation of many new institutions. And I hope that third time is going to be the charm as we move to a more decentralized mechanism for building these institutions.
Lovely. Okay. Thank you, Nell. And then we have David Pierce is going to be joining that panel as well, but he's already introduced himself. So I think we can move on to Jancy Strickler from who co-founded Kickstarter, but who gave an incredible sanity preserver on bentoism, which is, I think, the project that he'll be advancing. Jancy, are you here? If so, please unmute yourself and say hi.
Yeah, what's up, y'all? My name's Yancy. Nice to see so many exciting faces. Yeah, I'm working on a project called Bentoism, which is an expansion of how we define self-interest, and it's thinking about a future of values pluralism. So I'm a big believer that post-capitalism and is the moment that's happening now, and I will talk very optimistically about that.
All right, great. Next one up, we have Andres Gomez from Qualia Research Institution. Andres, are you here? Andres? No. Great. Then we're moving to Andrew Zaracine. Are you here? Yes, Andrew, you're here. Do you want to unmute yourself? It's so nice to see you again.
It's good to see you, Allison. Yeah, no, thanks. It's very humbled and very impressed at the technological wizardry to pull off of this this seamless gathering. I'm Andrew Sarrazin. I'm president of the Templeton World Charity Foundation. We're a charity that funds discovery, development, and launch of innovations that seek to secure long-term human flourishing. My interest in this particular section, this particular question, has to do with a paradigm shift that that hopefully will take place around defining well-being. Of course, the World Health Organization defines health as not just the absence of certain diseases, but the presence of health. I think the theoretical basis and the conceptual basis for that, those sorts of statements, is very much in its nascent evolution. And now's a great time as we step into a moment of really existential crisis and existential thinking to promote aspects of human flourishing and well-being beyond just physical survival. So things that the foundation's investing in at the moment are practical tools to enhance other directed behavior, cooperation. I'm a big advocate for psychological models around forgiveness. And so those sorts of relational strengths are not only helpful now in crisis when we don't have great biomedical interventions to deal with the virus, but they're going to help secure a long-term future that everyone hopes will come about. So thanks for letting me join, and I look forward to speaking with all of you.
Great, I can't wait. Thank you, it's really good to see you again. Next one up, we have what rituals, monuments, and prizes, similar to, for example, Future of Life's Unsung Hero Award, would help us remember, celebrate, and incentivize long-termism in a positive post-COVID-19 world. And here we have Jun Yoon from the Longevity Prize. Jun, I saw you earlier. Do you want to unmute yourself? Who are you? What do you hope to get out of the session?
Well, I'm very excited to be part of it. Thank you to you and Lou and Steve and Christine for stewarding this. And medical doctor by training. I'm president of Pollock Investors. We're a hedge fund. We've been around 31 years. But the stuff I'm going to talk about on Thursday, and hope to get as many of you involved as possible, is the work through our foundation on inclusive stakeholding. And establishing greater interdependence through capitalism so that we don't continue to produce externalities. Almost all the externalities throughout history have been unintentionally engendered through exclusive stakeholding. And so the prize model, we use the prize model to ingest excluded stakeholders, both currently, but as well as future stakeholders, so that everybody participates, so we don't end up with all these epiphenomena that have happened throughout history. So two grand challenges, one's on inclusive stakeholding, and the second one is going to be render all of this through the arts. We're going to have naming contests for new words, including Psychology 2.0. We're going to undo Freud and Maslow, and also through music and the arts to leverage those platforms as a way to rewire the human brain. Culture.
All right, lovely. Okay, this is awesome. Next one up, we have Quian Levitt, who has been spearheading a quite particular celebratory day over a few sanity preservers already. Quian, what do you want to talk about?
Well, I just kind of realized that I'm going to have to try and unify my passions and interests related to this potential opportunity that we have here with the particular thing about prizes and festivals and celebrations. Okay, and I think I'll have something when the panel starts up. I was thinking perhaps June, maybe you and I might even want to talk a little beforehand to see if we can kind of get something consistent rather than just uncoordinated. Anyway, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I actually, as Allison and some of you know, did a hour-long talk at one of these Foresight events on potential upsides of COVID-19. It's a little bit out of date now, but I really think there are a lot of them, and prizes and such may help realize some of them, and we should probably figure out how we can leverage that. But I, in general, feel that there's a lot of stuff we can leverage, and I mean pragmatic stuff, right? I don't mean like the end of capitalism and all this kind of stuff that frankly may be highly unlikely, but just pragmatic stuff that that we may be able to deploy and get buy-in for to improve the world in the aftermath.
Okay, lovely. Do we have Francesca here? Is Francesca here? If so, unmute yourself. Francesca wrote a fantastic children's book on Dr. Lee. And so one of the things that we want to discuss in this session is, for example, creating a Dr. Lee celebration day to celebrate him, and perhaps tied to a whistleblower award or something. But Francesca wrote a fantastic book about this already, and she'll be joining that session too. So get excited. Okay, and then the last session of the first week is how can we use creative media and art to interpret and disseminate emerging norms in positive cooperative ways instead of polarizing ways. And there we have Jane Metcalf from NeoLive and Wired previously. She couldn't join the call today, I think, unless you're here. But Lydia, are you on the call? Jake Harper, are you on the call? Dekai, are you on the call? For Dekai, I think it's a very challenging time because he's in Asia, and that may have been a little hard. All right.
I'm actually on the call.
Oh my God! Okay, you made it. Great. Beautiful behind you. Okay, so what would you like to talk about? You've talked, you came from a fantastic sanity preserver already, especially about an unbiased project and about what's going on in Hong Kong right now. So what kind of positive creative media can we use to help people cooperate more rather than polarize more?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I'm looking forward to the conversation. There's a lot of things that I think that we can do, everything from music to videos and filmmaking, the kinds of stories that we tell. One of the things that I'm concerned about, you alluded to earlier today, which is that we're already beginning to see sort of coming back away from this mindset of we're all on the same boat here, and we need to like work together and figure out how to deal with planetary crises, which is something that we're facing in a lot of respects. You know, not only this particular virus, there's going to be far worse ones, predictably, given the overcrowding on our planet and the way we produce food, especially animal food, that is the source of a lot of our viruses, but also climate change and the economic situation. And these are problems that our current world order has proven to be deficient at tackling. We're good at short-term things and local things. We've not been good at coordinating planetary responses. So I'm hopeful that we can find ways to tell stories that get people to focus on what it will take beyond our day-to-day life, to actually make use of everything from AI that helps us to understand better how people relate to stories, as well as how people relate to each other and don't relate to each other, about disinformation and narratives and unconscious bias, but also about the power of love in this kinds of stories that we can tell.
Super, sweet. Well, that will be, I think, quite an interesting session. We have a few fantastic contributors to that one as well that are really versed in creative media, so we can actually try to come up with a few ideas that we could disseminate. All right, so second one up, we have second week up. We're now moving, so the first week will all be about, okay, what is this new world that we want to envision? How can we communicate about this? What is a narrative, that is emerging right now and that is possible right now that is different from perhaps, the way that we've been going so far. And so the second week will then be quite concrete on like, how can we actually make people's lives better? There are a few opportunities really to push for really high impact science and technology development right now that weren't possible before. So the first question that we're going to have in that week is going to be about how can the current crisis convince mainstream investment and philanthropy to increase funding projects aimed at long-term resilience and scientific progress. It seems that for the first time ever, there's a spotlight right now and the world is actually caring about resilience and it's caring about scientific progress. How crazy. Let's make use of that. Jan, if you're here, do you want to unmute yourself and maybe say a few words about you and what you hope to bring to the session?
Sure. So arguably the biggest problems that humanity has, they are the tragedy of common situations. And in tragedy of common situations, sort of market mechanisms aren't really helping. They usually are making things worse, or like quite often are making things worse and usually not helping. And the effective altruism movement sort of was founded on a narrative that the mainstream philanthropy is not really helping either. Now, within the effective altruism movement, there are sort of like two big schools of thought. One is that we should kind of look at existing problems and try to solve them as efficiently as possible by using kind of data, quantitative methods, and being very transparent about the mechanisms and thereby sort of like shaming rest of the world into action by basically giving a really good lead. And then the second school of thought that is thinking that actually the biggest problems we might not even have today, the biggest problems might be in the future. And they have like sort of a bit of a disadvantage over the first school of thought because like it's very hard to engage with sort of intuitions where you are talking about something that hasn't happened, that like, and you're talking about it in sort of by describing abstract mechanisms that might create those situations that they should be kind of preparing for already. Another interesting thing about the COVID crisis is that I call it a minimum viable global catastrophe, that it's basically clearly a species-wide problem that we haven't had for a while. And now after the species, after everybody's has had this personal experience in their life with this species-wide problem, hopefully it would be much easier for the kind of the long-termist school of thought in EA and elsewhere in allied communities to kind of inspire people into action along those lines. But like the question is, are there ways how we could kind of catalyze it even further?
Okay, lovely. Yeah, I think we're gonna, maybe screen a few different opportunities, like specific opportunities in there during the session. And Andrew, who just introduced himself, will also be part of the session. And Niels Regge, who is from Apollo Ventures. They're like a longevity and health extension focused VC, but they very, very much care about, the really like long-term flourishing for humans. And so we're going to talk quite, I think, diverse across philanthropy and investment. All right, great. Then next one up, we have, how can current loosening of red tape around COVID-19 interventions be extended to ease the way for high impact science? So on this panel, we have Jim O'Neill. Jim, you're here with a very beautiful, very beautiful avatar. Who are you and what do you want to bring to the session?
Okay, I have to say, it's not an avatar. It's the actual landscape behind me. But I know it looks like a green screen. I don't know what's going on with Zoom. Yeah, so first of all, my passion is reversing aging, but Aubrey's going to talk about that. So I think on this panel, it's not so much about that as about government and institutions. So I asked the question on Twitter this morning, if government did not exist, what would you do? And in a way that was, there's been interesting answers, but in a way that was kind of a glib question because that's the world we've all been living in, kind of doing our best to figure out for ourselves and for our communities what's true and what's useful. Probably most people on this chat have kind of stopped trusting government and big institutions on things like that as they watch them lie about the efficacy of masks and respirators, human-to-human transmission, whether stigmata are worse than the virus and so forth. So sort of pretending that WHO and CDC and FDA didn't exist, what do we actually think is true? And how much can we get away with solving problems as a society, not only not relying on government, but trying to evade it? We probably all of us have, in some ways, tried to evade government, either by getting a home test where FDA says you should only get tests at point of care, or doing our own research on which antivirals would be efficacious if we were unlucky enough to get infected, and things like that. So that's kind of going to be the sort of starting from square one theme of this panel, I think.
All right, neat. Thanks for your input. We have John Lewis, who gave a fantastic sanity preserver on a recent project that he's working to accelerate a specific vaccine. And one really amazing thing that came out of a lot of the vaccine discussions that we had over the past few weeks was that it does seem like things are moving much faster than they did before. So how can we kind of like leave those kind of like little kind of like gaps in the kind of like institutional framework that have been created through which kind of like high impact science can like can kind of like move swifter. How can we like leave those open and maybe even expand those? And John, do you want to say maybe a few words about you and what you hope to bring to the panel?
Sure, thank you so much. I just wanted to say that I've been trying to, so I'm a scientist, I'm a university professor in Canada. This is not a real background, but it's often like this in the sky where I live. As a university professor, we spent a lot of time talking to like-minded individuals and a lot of time spending our time on minutiae. And I'd say this is the most diverse group of people I've ever had the opportunity and pleasure to interact with at the same time. So really, really interesting ideas so far. Like I said, I'm a university researcher, really spent my career passionate about genetics and bringing genetic technologies from the lab and to the benefit of patients. And in the lab, we've developed a gene therapy platform that now we've commercialized and are working with a number of different companies to bring their sort of genetic medicines to reality. One of those is in the longevity industry, Ocean Biotechnologies, a health span extending gene therapy. Another one of those is in cancer. So as a day job, I work in an oncology department, and we're starting a clinical trial in cancer next year. We've actually turned this technology to address COVID-19, and we're right in the middle of now of going, interacting with the FDA, interacting with Health Canada, going through all the red tape and regulatory requirements to put this through. So we're right in the middle of it. My vision for genetic, I've been passionate about genetic medicines for a long time. The opportunity is fantastic. We can design things on the spot that are personalized that can have an impact. So COVID-19 is a great use case for something where we've got a sequence, we can design something very quickly and deploy it. But I think we're looking at a future where every bedside has a little genetic synthesizer to make a genetic medicine that's suited to a patient. We can even have genetic printers. For instance, we talked about a project where we might beam instructions to create a genetic medicine to the space station, print it out there and deliver it to somebody there. So I think the opportunity for this kind of technology is fantastic, and I'm looking forward to exploring the ideas of how we can improve their translation.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. All right, great. Okay, so that should be quite an actionable session. Next one up, we have how can the current public focus on health be leveraged to promote a focus on prevention of disease and aging as root cause of many diseases. And we have Aubrey here, and I think Sonia. Aubrey, do you want to say hi, and what do you hope to bring to the session? And let's make this very concise and quick. We have a few more sessions to attend to, I think, and I want to be mindful of your time. That said, I'm personally enjoying the introductions a lot, so I'm very, very happy to go over time if people want to stick with it. Aubrey.
Right, yeah, yeah. I have another reason for being concise, which is that I'm supposed to be speaking at the Radfest rally in about 2 minutes from now. Well, of course, everyone knows I work on the biology of aging. I'm keen on doing something about it, and so that's all very well, and I'll probably just introduce that. But the main thing I think I want to do on the day is to talk about something rather related to what Jan Tallinn mentioned just now, but a little bit different. I want to focus on how we can influence decision makers and policy makers in relation to preparedness. Well, both preparedness and prevention in the future, and on a relatively broad-based sense. So I've been actually thinking a lot about the similarities between the current crisis and the situation in the aftermath of 9/11, in which a lot of things were done, a lot of things changed. Some of them changed more publicly than others. Some of them were more inconvenient than others. But most of them have become progressively less inconvenient as time's gone on. And I have a feeling we should be able to, in some sense, emulate that here to the betterment of the kind of focuses that we have, especially in relation to the health of the elderly, of course. I think that certainly we can expect to see a lot more investment in, vaccine development and infrastructure and training of medical personnel and so on, but perhaps also a lot more focus, a lot more acceptance of the legitimacy of focus on the health problems of the elderly. Because, people don't seem to be saying very much, oh, the elderly are terribly over-affected by COVID, but that's okay because they were going to die quite soon anyway. People don't seem to be saying that very much. So I feel that this is a chance to actually get people to realize that what they really think is that the elderly are just as entitled to be healthy as anybody else. And maybe we can make that happen.
All right, great. Then I'm hoping you will take what you will now speak about at RADFest and bring this to the panel and inform us. Have a good time there, and I'll see you in your session. Thank you, Aubrey.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Next one up, we have how can current work on contact tracing and other distributed ledger technologies that is privacy preserving be expanded to increase coordination across people? And from that session, I think who's here is Jeff Laddish, who's a Foresight Fellow and who just gave a fantastic talk on that. So I'm really happy that he's here. Jeff, what do you want to bring to the session?
Yeah, so I think we're in a really interesting time right now. And I think what's not obvious to most people, it's not obvious to me either, is how difficult it will be to contain this virus. And I think in particular, how expensive will it be? So the current strategy that countries who have successfully contained this virus have used is extensive testing and extensive contact tracing, some of which is very invasive from a privacy perspective. So there's both the expense on the capital side, and there's also the expense on the sort of human rights side or data side. And so the question is, how can we make this cheaper, both in terms of money, but also in terms of how much it infringes upon our rights. And so this is really critical, not just, I think, for the developed world, but also for the developing world, where it's very unlikely that they're going to be able to sustain the level of resources that countries so far that have successfully contained it have used. So if we're looking at India, and we're looking at a lot of countries in Africa, it's just very unlikely that using the current techniques that they're going to be able to succeed at containment. And together with these two regions, we're looking at 3 billion people. So this is huge. And I think we still don't really know how difficult this will be. So that's sort of where I'm at right now. And I look forward to what my other panelists will say. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. It's a big challenge, but a big opportunity as well.
That's true. It is a big opportunity. Why not make the necessary also useful afterwards? Okay, we have Sonia also here, who's on the panel on health extension and longevity. So the panel that Aubrey just spoke about. Sonia, who are you and what are you hoping to bring to the panel?
Hi, Allison. Thank you for organizing all this, by the way. I wrote a book called 100 Plus about longevity, and I'm now doing longevity investing. I'm really looking forward to the panel with Aubrey. I've been spending a lot of my time recently reading about the 1918 flu and trying to draw parallels between that and what we're going through now. And I think there's a lot of lessons that can be learned and an opportunity for us to convince people to open their eyes a bit more about sort of the death trance that we find ourselves in. So yeah. I'll leave it there, and I know we're under a time crunch, and we can discuss more when we're on the panel.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Yeah, Sonia was actually, in 100 Plus Capital, was enabled us to actually kickstart a series of longevity salons this year, and it was the last one that we did before COVID hit. And I'm really almost like weekly getting messages about the videos from that. So I'm hoping that a lot of the ideas that even at that meeting that we already tackled about COVID and the relation to health extension, we can pick up there again. So thank you so much for enabling those. I think they've been like a tremendous beacon for this community. All right, great. Next one up, we have Erica Frank, and this one will be on how can we use the creativity around online experiences to jumpstart the economy and create innovative, accessible virtual education, work, and life. Erica, in a few words, who are you and what do you hope to bring to this panel? You've already done a fantastic sanity preserver.
Thanks. So I'm a professor at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. I'm a Canada Research Chair in Preventive Medicine and Population Health, who's spent most of her life in educational interventions and research on those. So there are 3 areas that particularly interest me. The first one from this, in terms of leapfrogging, the the prior panels taken care of, how we can use this as a way to get people to pay more careful attention to chronic disease risk factors, since essentially that seems to be the issue in terms of whether or not you get sick from and die from COVID. But the prior panel's taken care of that. So the other two pieces where I think there is a real opportunity, which I'll talk about on the panel, is in the hundreds of millions of students who are now learning with their professors with digital education, and how this can transform education and through our platform, nextgenu.org, and through others. And also similarly, how conferencing is being transformed by things like this. As a result of that, a week ago, we started a new nonprofit, meethere.org, to be able to provide free and low-cost conferencing, so that we don't all have to be agog at Allison's dexterity in this, but can provide it to others as well. So those are the things that interest me most. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. All right, so I think this would finish off the second week of, actually trying to get into the nitty gritty of science and tech, and, what are specific things that we can do there. And then the last one, we're gonna kind of like zoom out a little bit and talk about how can we, from this system, from this crisis, create global systems that are more resilient and cooperative on a whole. And there we're gonna talk on the Monday, how can resilient and agile communities and organizations, in contrast to authoritarian regimes, emerge stronger as preferred global points for coordination. And I think I'm seeing an Alex here. Alex Gladstein, is this you? If so, please say hi. Okay, not Alex Gladstein, then hi, other Alex. We had a few talks about this already, and some in the Sanity Preserver salons. I'm referring you to the previous spreadsheets, but there's a really, I think, a strong opportunity right now to be pushing for more decentralized points for cooperation across communities, rather than leaving it all into the hands of authoritarian, perhaps really top-down or totalitarian governments. And we're going to be discussing about how we can best go about strengthening those local points for coordination in that session. I think that those participants will be at the meeting. They're not here, not here currently. Next one up, we have, how can the blatant brokenness of our institutional sense-making be used to promote evidence-driven global sense-making? That's in the third week on Tuesday. And we have Anthony here, who already gave us Sanity Preserver. And what do you want to bring to the session? And yeah, what are you hoping to get out of it?
So yeah, I'm Anthony. I'm a professor of physics. I'm also a co-founder of the Future of Life Institute and Metaculus, the prediction platform. And I've been recently very super interested in prediction because as individuals, we actually make very accurate predictions all the time and take them seriously and make decisions based on those predictions. But as larger groups, let alone as a civilization, we kind of are terrible at those things. We really have no good sort of coordination, group prediction, understanding, and decision-making mechanisms, as we've seen recently in spades with COVID-19. So I'm now trying hard to nucleate sort of ways of doing that, including the Metaculus platform and other related sort of efforts. And I want to talk a lot about that.
Okay, lovely. I can't wait. A very actionable project right now. We also have Kim Osborne, who was also here for Sanity Preserver and who has been a fantastic communicator with a host of different organizations. Kim, I think you're here. And what are you excited about in the session? What opportunities do you see?
Yeah, I am here. Thank you for having me. The Sanity Preserver was a wonderful experience, and I really appreciate you organizing it and putting that out there. It's been, yeah, what a great thought starter for all of us during these times. I'm really interested in how and why people believe what they do, and a lot of my work has been in crisis and disasters as a communicator, a strategist, and a trainer in leadership development. A lot of my work has been as an advisor to decision makers, and especially in communication and media literacy. And so right now I'm the director of the Center for Leadership Development at the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California. I'm working for the Department of Defense, and I'm also on the faculty on the College of Education at the University of Georgia. In the past, I had an endowed chair in communication at Purdue University, but I'm not a traditional kind of researcher academic. I've worked as an advisor to NATO in Afghanistan as the Chief Strategic Communications Advisor to the Afghan National Security Forces. And I worked also as an advisor to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe in Kosovo. I had a Fulbright in Myanmar, and I led the government operations and public affairs effort as one of the first wave of volunteers during Hurricane Harvey.
The list goes on. It's very long. So and there's, yeah, I think we have a lot to discuss on that session, and I think you will be able to perhaps help Anthony a little bit. Like once we have data and a good sense making, how can we actually make that data communicative and attractive for people to use? So I'm super excited about this session.
Yeah.
And then next one up, we have how can current unusual openings, for example, the UBI proposal or release of nonviolent prisoners, be used to promote rational national and international policies? What a word cadaver. But we have for that one, Ruth Hicken from the World Economic Forum and Sam Hilton from the Center for the Study of Existential Risk. Ruth, I think you're on the call. Do you want to say hi?
I am, and I think I see Sam on the call as well. So hello, I'm Ruth. I work for the World Economic Forum in our Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is in San Francisco, Tokyo, Mumbai, and actually we have centers all around the world. And our focus is specifically on technology governance, which for us is how can you regulate technology in a way that allows for the benefits and manages all the potential risks. And I think all of us know that technology is being used as a potential solution, whether it be contact tracing or other surveillance solutions. But for us now more than ever, kind of technology governance is very important, and how these solutions are rolled out in a crisis will kind of set the pathway for whatever the new world is in which we operate, which is going to be fundamentally different to the one that we live in at the moment. So I guess that's really the perspective that we'll bring, and certainly from a forum perspective, the need for international cooperation and global cooperation is integral to that.
Lovely. Okay, it's quite a bucket full of topics to discuss. And then Sam Hilton, hi. Do you want to say hi?
Hi there, I'm Sam Hilton. I work mostly in the UK Parliament, trying to promote long-term thinking in policy making, and we're trying to push for a new law to encourage sort of more future generations long-term focused policy making. And I think that the current crisis presents huge opportunities for new institutions, new focus on the future, new concern for future risks, existential risks, and potentially on the sort of scale of the past 2 world wars, the creation of new international institutions. But also there's a potential that these opportunities will be missed, and I'm keen to sort of see what can be done and who's willing to work on trying to push for the biggest plausible change that we can really create out of this to try and prevent future risks and make a more safe and secure future for humanity. I'm also doing, as well as that, a bunch of scenario planning work, so running scenario planning sessions for people in the UK Parliament. So more generally interested in where this is all going to go and what we can sort of see now about the different paths that things are going to go down and how that can help us plan and make a better future for all.
Great, lovely. I can't wait for this. And thank you so much, Sam. Then next one up, we have how can the spotlight on global fragility help promote resilience, peace, and cooperation internationally? And here we have Samo Borja, Dave Denkenberger, we have Caroline and Asaf. And I think I'm seeing David on this call. David, do you want to say hi?
Yes, hi. So I direct the Alliance to Feed the Earth in Disasters, or ALFED, also an assistant professor in Alaska. And in the current crisis, we're planning on making a collaborative document on the COVID food crisis and trying to promote more cooperative responses, like not doing food export bans. We're also working on the possibility of cascading risks, including potentially to nuclear war, and been working on resilience and the message of hope that if we cooperate, we could feed everyone through alternative foods. And yeah, I'm like others, I am optimistic that the current crisis will result in more interest in global resilience.
Thanks, that's very nice. And Lise, I think you and Jeff, who was also earlier introducing himself, were actually for a Foresight Salon there, well, now about a year ago on civilizational collapse scenarios. And even that you managed to kind of like present with a really, I think, like actionable and proactive and optimistic stance. So I'm super looking forward for what you share with us. I think this is all, I think, of the participants available from your group for today, but there's a lot more. I refer everyone to the spreadsheet, and because we only have a fraction of people introducing themselves here, the others are going to be joining their session. And then the last one up, really, we have: how can COVID-19 be used as a model for leaders to prepare for risks of future disasters, especially from climate change? And here we have Tom Chi, I think I'm seeing him on the call, who is formerly a co-founded Google X, and who actually wants us to call it not climate change, but climate destabilization. Correct, Tom?
Yep. Oh, yeah. So the stuff I work on is to work toward a civilization where humanity is a net positive to nature. And there's a bunch that I do in terms of framing what it looks like to be a net positive to nature around air, water, soil, biodiversity. And then practically, I do it as the founding partner of a venture firm that invests in exactly that, as well as a technologist that has worked on those sorts of technologies directly.
Okay, super sweet. Creon will also be joining that session, who's been doing a ton of that work at Planet, but Creon already introduced himself. So we're going to tie a bow onto this now. I encourage all of you again to check out the spreadsheet. There's a lot more speakers and a lot more panelists and contributors that will be joining there. And for now, for everyone who's participating, and that also includes the speakers, Lou has a few ways and how you can participate over the past 3 weeks to really make the most of this and do much more action rather than just talking.
Right, so the main ways you can participate and really engage is one, there's a Google group which you should all have been invited to. If you have not, shoot us a message, Alison and I, and we'll make sure to add you. On this group, you can reach out to anyone else in this group. In this workshop, you can ask a question, start a discussion. You can continue a debate that has been started in a session. The second way you can collaborate is through the collaboration spreadsheet, so the main HiveMind spreadsheet, and maybe we can show it here on the screen, right? And on this spreadsheet, you will find for each session a little like column that says collaborative notes. And here, yeah, you can put your notes for each session. If you are interested in, if you feel very strongly about a session and you want to take ownership over the note taking, you can register your name in the little like, yeah, yellow space that's here. At the end, we'll be writing a report, and yeah, if you want to be the main collaborator for this session and writing the summary, you can do it there. And finally, we also have like a collaboration form that you will find on top of the Collaborate spreadsheet. You'll find the link there. So this is how you can let us know if you would like to contribute to a focus group, if you would like to become an ambassador for the ideas that will be generated through this workshop in your own community. This is also how you can let us know if you want to lend a hand, like in any other way that comes to your mind, that you can imagine. We have definitely probably not thought of everything, so let us know what you would like to make, what you would like to do to make this workshop much better. Yep, that's it.
All right, great. I just shared the collaboration form again in the chat. So this is basically really for like everyone to kind of like voice their interest in becoming more involved. So that said, I think what we're going to do after this is the main forum for discussion in which we can push out announcement, but in which we also encourage you guys to contribute, will be the Google groups. And if you haven't received an invitation to those, feel free to shoot me a message. In those Google groups, we're going to send up again another summary of what we just discussed, and including this video, so you can kind of check back on all the speakers. And yeah, we encourage you to really plug in as much as possible. I think, like a few words maybe for closing, that, I really want to encourage all of you that, the next 3 weeks, that's basically what we came up with after 5 weeks of those sanity preservers. This is not exhaustive at all, right? And this is so far, really just like a small list of potential things that we could all be working on and that we could all be doing. I think if one thing has been very clear right now is that the emperor is wearing no clothes, right? There is no person in the control tower. And I really think this is a very good thing. It really demands every one of us to step up. And, there is no permission, and there also shouldn't be a permission granted for doing the things that we believe are right. So I'm really encourage all of you to do this mental split. On the one hand, we want to, end the sessions with something beautiful, with something that is inspiring about the long-term future. So we will be doing those moments of hope. But on the other hand, you please do the split and also think as an activist, right? This is, sometimes doing the thing looks different than talking about the thing. And we are hoping to, produce a report after this that, we can share globally to maybe create some competition amongst governments of actually implementing the right thing, if we can all just point to this one right thing to do in a specific scenario. But this is like such a sad goal, right? We should be aiming much higher. We should really be, instead of just writing about things, we should be collaborating. A lot of those things don't really need more discussion, right? We can do a Dr. Lee's Celebratory Day tomorrow. We set up a Facebook event tomorrow that is for the day of his death next year, and we just do it. So I really encourage all of you to contribute as much as possible, be as vocal and as active as possible. It requires really every one of us. There's no skill that is needed. Please reach out to us. And yeah, I think one thing that Robin Hanson always likes to say that maybe is a nice nice quote for this. He always says, he talks about dream time as this time of legend in which future selves will look back at our current selves, and we'll think about our current time as this time of legend, a favorite setting for grand fiction when low delusion heroes and the strange clowns around them could most plausibly have changed the course of history. So this was already true to some degree all the time, right? But 2020 is really this year when we're moving from dream time into this strange nimbus between dream and reality. And it's really upon us to wake up into the futures that we usually can only dream up. So I want to leave you with that. We'll be sending out more information on how to plug in, and things will become much clearer over the next 3 weeks. I really applaud so many of you to have stayed on for so long. We definitely did not expect such a high interest in this workshop, so we're really happy. But really, let's make the most of this. Let's pretend it counts, because it really does this time. All right, well, thank you so much for sticking it out for so long. I can't wait to see many of you much more often in the next few weeks. And yeah, we'll be in touch over the Google group. Bye everyone, have a lovely Saturday.